Teaching a child to read can sometimes be a bit maddening, but the tips in this podcast will hopefully help you smooth the way to teaching your child to read. This is the Raising Arrows podcast, where we discuss all things large family homemaking and homeschooling. Welcome, friends. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Raising Arrows podcast. I'm Amy Roberts from raisingarrows.net, and this is episode number 150, Tips for Teaching Your Child to Read. Now, it has been a rainy week here where I live, and so if you occasionally hear a rumble of thunder through this microphone, it's because it has just been raining. There's been thunderstorm after thunderstorm, and so I love watching the rain come down, but if I'm going to get any podcasts recorded, I'm just going to have to hope for the best. And if you hear a rumble of thunder here or there, know that it is because I live in a real world, in a real house, not in some studio that has padded walls. I am sitting actually in my bedroom. I have a desk in my bedroom. That's where I do most of my blog work, is either sitting in the chair, sitting at my desk, or sitting on my bed. Those are the places that I do all of my blog work. And so today I'm at the desk, and yes, it is raining outside. So let's get started though here with tips for teaching your child to read. I also want to share that today's podcast sponsor is Common Sense Press, the publishers of learning language arts through literature, and we'll be talking more about them later on in the podcast, so stay tuned. When it comes to teaching your child to read, the very first thing you need to do is be reading aloud to them. They actually catch so much of the nuances of language, the rhythm and flow of language, just by listening to someone read it aloud. So get yourself some great read aloud books. There's lots of different lists out there, and start reading aloud to your children regularly. And literally, you could read anything and everything to them. It really doesn't matter. Years ago, we would read the ingredients off of a label, or we would read the instruction manual to some sort of piece of equipment or something that we had. We would just read it aloud so that the kids could hear the way that the language was formed. It's a very, very important part of learning for children. Now, if you feel like you're not a very good read aloud reader, and I know there are people who definitely feel like that. They feel like they don't have a good sense of the flow of the language. It always comes across a little disconnected and disjointed. You actually could have them listen to audiobooks or on YouTube. A lot of times there are people who will read aloud books on YouTube for you to be able to share with your children. But I would encourage you to listen to those and share those with your children, but to work up the courage to actually do the reading aloud yourself and to teach yourself how to read with a good rhythm and pace and flow yourself. And a lot of that just comes from exactly the same way your children are going to learn this. It comes from hearing good literature read out loud, listening to the tempo, the timing, the words, the way that people express themselves, and then learning how to do that yourself. It really is a practice makes perfect, and it's a great opportunity as a homeschool mom to start learning those things so that you can share those with your children who are also learning alongside you. So the very number one thing you need to do is read aloud to them. I have a podcast, it's number 13, way back when, where I talk about making read aloud time more peaceful, because I know a lot of moms struggle with read aloud time not being a peaceful thing for them because you have a lot of kids and they're climbing the walls like monkeys, and you're not real sure what you're going to do to make this something that they're actually listening to and understanding. And that's kind of distracting too when you're trying to read aloud to them and maybe you're not super confident in your read aloud skills. So take a listen to that podcast, again, number 13, about making read aloud time more peaceful, so that you can start this process of reading aloud to your children. And even if you feel like I missed that window of opportunity, they're not little kids anymore, I don't know that they'll listen to me read aloud anymore, give it a try. I will guarantee you that most kids like to be read aloud to. I know in public school as a child, we were still read aloud to even up through 4th grade, but my kids listened to read alouds clear through their high school years as well. And it is not uncommon for my husband to even sit in and listen to the read alouds. Pretty much everybody likes to be read aloud to. And so don't miss that opportunity, or don't think that you've missed that opportunity. Just go ahead and dive in and do it and start reading aloud to them no matter what their age is. It will benefit them greatly. Again, to hear that timing and tempo and just the language read out loud, it will make them stronger readers. The next thing you can do is encourage them to tell stories, and then to also try to write stories as they are gaining more writing skills through their phonics. But start out with just encouraging them to tell their own stories. You can even write those stories down. We have lots of little bits of paper here and there where some child dictated a story to me and I just wrote it down for them on a little piece of paper. It's important for them to start pulling together different words and sentences and building structure and building a storyline that makes sense, and just help them to tell those stories and put those down in writing, and then show them the different words that you've written. Show them that this word with the capital letter is the name of the person that you named in this story. This is how you spell it. This is what it looks like. The more you encourage them to tell these stories, the more they will feel connected to words. And when they begin to read, you want them to feel that connection. You want the words, the letters, the order of the letters to make sense to them as they begin to read. And the more grasp they have of the English language, the more they've heard it spoken, the more they have spoken it themselves, the better able they will be to see those letters in the order that they're in, start sounding them out, and then make a word from them. Because it's actually kind of a difficult concept to take those individual sounds and to pull them together in a flowing way that actually sounds like a word. Otherwise, you have something like d-a-g, and no matter how many times you say d-a-g, d-a-g, it does not ever sound like dog. And so children need to have this connection with the word dog so that as they flow those letters together and you help them learn how to flow those letters together, it begins to make sense. Oh, that says dog, and I know that this looks like a D and this looks like a G, and you put those together with the ah in the center, and it comes out dog, because they have more of a grasp of the language and how it works, and they've heard those words before. And so then as they begin to sound them out, they know that da'aga is not a word, but if they can get it to flow just even a little bit, it suddenly clicks for them and they realize, oh wait, that's dog. I know the word dog. So the more words you can expose them to, and the more you can expose them to telling their own stories and then seeing those stories written out, the better off they will be when they begin to do those phonics lessons. Now, one thing I alluded to just a bit ago was the fact that you will need to help them sound out things, and you will need to help them make those words flow. Some parents feel like if they help too much, the child's just going to rely on them and they're not going to ever really get it. But what they need to get is the idea that these letters make up words, and you have to flow the sound together in order to create a word that makes sense. So it is okay for you as a parent to help them just a little bit to flow those words together. Maybe give them just the beginning sound together and just help them to build that into a word. It is okay for you to be helping them like that. In fact, there are even sight words that I will still help my children with. My 6-year-old is learning how to read, and my 8-year-old is just about done with all of her phonics stuff. But the 6-year-old is right in the middle of all of that learning and putting things together. And there are times when there are sight words that she just simply does not know. Now, friends, those are sight words. You can't sound them out. So what I do with her is sometimes if I feel like this is a word that she absolutely doesn't know, I will put my finger under the word and go right underneath it fairly quickly and say there. It gets like THEIR there. That's a word she struggles with because she's not fully learned it yet. Now, she totally gets that word. She sees it every single time. She gets it right every single time. But there, that's different. That's harder for her. And it's a sight word, so it doesn't have a real easy way to sound it out. And so I will help her with that while I run my finger under it. And we'll do that over and over and over again until she gets it. And eventually one day she will have memorized that's the word there. In context, it will make sense to her because, again, she has learned the ebb and flow of the language. She knows that certain words go together because she's heard them over and over. So she will memorize it based on context. And so you need to help them along the way. It is okay to give them kind of a hand up, pull them to the next level, keep reaching for them and letting them grab on and help them out a little bit along the way. It's okay. Now, before we go any further, though, I do want to share with you about Common Sense Press and their program Learning Language Arts through Literature. It is a comprehensive and effective language arts program for 1st through 12th grade. The integrated approach is easy to teach and it will not overburden your student or your schedule with busy work. I don't like busy work. In one lesson, your student will learn grammar, spelling, vocabulary, writing mechanics, etc. One lesson. You don't have to have a lot of different lessons. It's all integrated into one lesson. Each lesson is based on a passage of quality literature as a model. Again, exactly what we've been talking about, quality literature. The lessons are open and go, requiring little to no prep for you as a teacher. And that is super important when you have a large family. Common Sense Press is a family-run company that publishes homeschool curricula, including learning language arts through literature. And they've been doing this since 1989. They've been creating products that are easy to use, they're affordable, they're effective, and they require minimal planning. So if you are interested in checking out Common Sense Press and learning language arts through literature, grab the coupon code down in the show notes. It's Raising Arrows 20. The R is capitalized, the A is capitalized, and it's the number 20 all together. There's no spaces. So capital RAISING, capital ARROWS 20, Raising Arrows 20. It will give you 20% off until the end of September on your entire order at commonsensepress.com. So head over to commonsensepress.com and use that coupon code and buy yourself some time and energy and homeschool materials that work for you rather than against you at commonsensepress.com. Now, as you are teaching your child to read, I am a big advocate of them having materials that are interesting to them. They will be more apt to be interested in reading if the things they are reading are actually interesting to them. So try to find things that captivate their interest, topics that are interesting to them as you begin to expose them to more and more literature. Hopefully the phonics books and the things that are being used in whatever phonics curriculum you choose for your child, hopefully those are interesting as well. But you need to start looking for material at the library or online or from friends that are things that they are interested in. Maybe you need to do something like a comic book style where there's a lot of graphic art, but then it has these little speech bubbles with a storyline in it. And maybe your child needs something like that to get them really started down the road of reading on their own. Maybe your child likes cats and dogs, so you need to go to the library and you need to look for early readers that include cats and dogs, stories about the cat did this or the dog did this. Now, in those early readers, one thing that I have found that is very disappointing to me, especially the ones that you'll find at the library, is there are so many words in there that I feel like are not age level. They've just thrown them in there because they need to have some sort of story. And sometimes a story even sounds a little dumbed down, which is irritating to me because if you're going to throw in words that are above age level and you're still going to have a dumbed down, boring story, that's kind of a waste of my time. So look for books that even if they've thrown in some extra words, and that's where you can help them. Remember Remember, I said it's okay to help them. It's okay to tell them that that word says such and such, or to help them sound it out. If it has some of those words in there that they're not quite able to read yet, but it's still an engaging story, look for those rather than the boring cat and dog story that doesn't make any sense and you know it's not going to captivate their interest. You would be almost better off finding something that's a little bit above their level and then helping them work through it. But I do know that there are some very good books out there that are not dumbed down and not boring and something that your children would enjoy, even if they need a little bit of help with it, to just kind of get them over that hump of being more confident in their reading, because sometimes that's the biggest issue, is not that they don't have the phonics down, but that they don't have the courage or the confidence to just move forward and try it. Try their hand at reading. So whatever you can do to encourage them to enjoy reading, definitely do that. Look into different kinds of reading material, even if it seems a little simplistic or it seems like something that you just rather, they were reading a real book instead of a book that has a bunch of pictures in it. Sometimes you need to do that first and then work your way into the real books, just to give them that confidence and that enjoyment of reading. And finally, I'd encourage you to be patient with your child as you are teaching them to read. There have been some of my children who needed a break. We started in on a phonics program and they just weren't getting it. You will know if your child just isn't getting it. The letters, they don't seem to remember them from lesson to lesson. They can't seem to blend them no matter what you try, no matter how many times you help them. They just aren't getting it. And those children probably need a break. You probably need to wait 2 months, 4 months, maybe even 6 months before jumping back in and trying again. I will almost guarantee you most of the time, all you need is that break, and then you come back in. They are old enough, they are more mature to get started and for it to actually make sense to them then. So don't be afraid to take a break from the phonics. Learning to read is not something that has to be done at a certain age or they're going to be behind for the rest of their lives. You can teach a child to read when they're a little bit older if they need some maturity on them before getting started with that. And interestingly enough, if you start a little bit later with a child who seems to just not be picking it up when some of the other kids were picking it up, they may actually learn much faster then. I've had that happen several times where I waited a little bit and I started teaching them a little bit later and they actually zoomed through the lessons because they were ready. Sometimes when we are pushing and we aren't patient and we're trying to do phonics too early, they don't learn as well. It takes them a lot longer to grasp the concepts. But if you wait until they are actually ready, they will just take off and do so well with the phonics lessons because it will all click for them because of that maturity and just taking that break and having that patience with them. I do want to share with you that the past several podcasts have been based on questions that I have received from podcast listeners. And so hopefully you're recognizing some of your questions. And if you have your own questions, please feel free to send them in to me at amy@raisingarrows.net. I will do my best not only to answer your email, but to also answer your question here on a future podcast. Also, don't forget to check out commonsensepress.com and use your coupon code RaisingArrows20. That's down in the show notes as well as the link to commonsensepress.com. It's 20% off until the end of September. So don't forget to use that 20% off code and check out their Learning Language Arts Through Literature program. As always, this is the Raising Arrows podcast, where we talk all things large family homemaking and homeschooling, and I will see you next time.